They say every family has its share of heartbreak. But this part of my story, this should have never happened.
My daughter once looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Mommy, I saw Daddy texting another woman and there was a heart emoji. You only send that to someone you love, right?"
Back then, my childhood looked normal enough.
It felt calm, almost happy, though my parents had this huge age gap no one really talked about. My mom was 20 years older than my dad. They met when she was 39 and he was just 19. Mom used to joke, when I was 18, I said, "The man who'll make me happy hasn't even been born yet." I was born when she was 41. Dad was barely 21. And for the first 10 years, age didn't seem to matter. We were like any other family. I remember backyard BBQs, movie nights, holiday dinners. And then, when I turned 10, everything stopped. I can see that day so clearly. It was late evening. Mom was wearing this white blouse with blue letters on it. She called me into their bedroom, already crying. Dad was on one side of me, she was on the other. That's when they told me Dad was leaving, they were getting a divorce. Up until that day, I only knew parents who laughed, hugged, threw birthday parties, but that night ripped it all away. Dad left and quickly found another woman closer to his age. He was 31, Mom was 51. The gap hit hard then. This new woman didn't want him seeing me. She'd spin lies about me to him, trying to keep us apart. I still remember one lie so clearly. Dad picked me up one weekend, I was wearing a little white skirt. Later, she told him I'd cursed her out. I hadn't even heard the word she claimed I used. But he believed her. He hit me that day, and that broke something inside me. Because at 10 years old, I believed my dad should have protected me, not a woman who just walked into his life. After that, I told my mom I didn't want to visit him anymore. Every time I did, there were fights, yelling, drama. I was done. As I pulled away, so did he. I can't remember him at a single birthday after I turned 10. No Christmas dinner memories, nothing. Maybe I've blocked it all out, or maybe he was just gone. Mom and I stayed together, just us. She died when I was 36, but I swear she never really lived those last 26 years. She carried that heartbreak like a ghost on her back. She did her best for me always, but I watched her spirit fade. She'd once been this tall, beautiful, glamorous woman, hair always done, nails polished. After Dad left, she just stopped. Her soul turned gray. And as I grew up, I promised myself I would never let a man break me like that. Never let my daughter see me crumble. But life has its own plans, and sometimes heartbreak circles back when you least expect it. After Dad left, my mom held on to that pain for decades. She did her best to raise me, but it was like a piece of her died the day he walked out. She never dated again, never really smiled the same way. She'd tell me, "Honey, he was the love of my life. He gave me you." And I'd argue back, "Mom, that's not enough reason to carry all this pain forever." But she couldn't let it go. Watching her fade taught me exactly what I didn't want for myself or my own daughter someday. I kept that lesson buried deep, thinking it would protect me. But life has a funny way of testing you. I grew up quiet, no teenage rebellion, no sneaking out. I was just angry at my dad for leaving, angry at my mom for never really moving on. When I turned 18, I swore things would be different for me. I still remember the night I met my ex-husband like it was yesterday. It was raining like crazy, a typical Saturday night in our little town in Texas. My cousins begged me to come out to a local bar with live music. I didn't want to. I was always the one making excuses to stay home. But they pulled me out the door. I walked in, soaking wet, hair a mess. I spotted an old friend, gave him a huge hug. As I turned around, someone tapped my shoulder and said, "Hey, my buddy's got a crush on you." I just laughed. Who? I hadn't even noticed anyone standing behind him. Hours later, after a few drinks and dancing under neon lights, I asked my friend to point him out again. "You still want to meet him?" he teased. And I said, "Yeah, bring him over." The moment we spoke, I felt it, that spark, that stupid fairy tale thing you think only happens in movies. We kissed for the first time up against an iron railing near the dance floor. I fell hard, right then and there. We made plans for the next day. He called like he promised. By the second date, we were calling it love. Looking back now, I see how young we were, but at the time, it felt like the universe had finally given me a love story nothing could break. He was military, so we only saw each other on weekends. But we were obsessed with each other. Every goodbye was torture. Every phone call was too short. We'd spend hours talking about our future, a house, kids, trips, all the cliches. We dated for years before getting married. Fought here and there, sure, but it was never dramatic. He wasn't controlling. I wasn't jealous. I used to tell myself, if you have to search for lipstick on his collar or scroll through his phone, you've already lost. I believed if I ever had to look for proof, the relationship was already dead. So I trusted him completely. We built a life together, simple but happy. And when we finally decided to have a baby, it didn't come easy. I went through painful treatments alone because he was always deployed somewhere months at a time. I'd sit in those waiting rooms, take shots by myself, hold my breath for good news. He'd be gone, calling in between missions to check in, but never there for the appointments. It hurt, but I told myself, this is marriage. This is what we signed up for. And when our daughter finally came along, she was the light of my world. What I didn't know then was that becoming a mother would change everything, not just for me, but for him too. Having our daughter changed my world overnight. She was this tiny, perfect reason to stay strong. But if I'm honest, looking back, I see now how alone I was through it all. My pregnancy wasn't easy. He was deployed for most of it this time, all the way out to Alaska, doing special ops training in brutal weather. I was back home in Florida, belly growing, juggling doctor's visits, bills, and taking care of my mom, who'd started slipping into early dementia. I did the baby shower planning, the hospital bag, the nursery alone. I'd tell myself it was normal, that other military wives did it too. But sometimes, at night, I'd lie awake and wonder if this was what marriage was supposed to feel, like a constant waiting game. Then she was born, and for a while things were good again. We had our little family. We'd talk about moving to the States for good someday, maybe buying a place near Tampa or Orlando, anywhere warm, with beaches and good schools. It was our dream. But reality always got in the way. He was always gone. When he was home, he felt like a stranger in his own house. And I kept trying to convince myself it was worth it because the dream was so much bigger than just the two of us. It was about giving our daughter the family I never had. But the cracks were there. I just didn't want to see them. He was distant, sometimes cold. He'd come home from a mission, and it was like he'd left a part of himself out there in the snow, with his squad, with his secrets. He'd brush me off when I'd ask him how he was really feeling. And I'd do what I always did, tell myself to be patient. When our daughter was about 8, things really shifted. I started seeing things I couldn't ignore anymore. He was restless. He'd spend hours locked away on his phone. He'd leave for runs that took twice as long as they should have. I remember once I asked him straight out if something was going on. He laughed, kissed my forehead, and said, "Babe, don't be paranoid." And I believed him because I wanted to, because that's what you do when you've built your whole life on trust. A year later, he told me about the Antarctica mission, a 13-month deployment to a remote research station, doing logistics work with an international team. He spun it like it was our golden ticket. "Babe, the pay for this mission will set us up. When I'm back, we can finally buy our place in Florida. We can make our dream real." I wanted to believe him so badly, so I did. Even when our daughter cried herself to sleep the night he left. Even when he said goodbye at the front door instead of letting us come to the airport. "It'll just make it harder," he said, wiping away my tears, burying his face in my hair like he'd never breathe me in again. And for those 13 months, I did what I always did. I waited. I held our family together. I decorated the house for his return. I told our daughter every day, "Daddy's doing this for us." He called every single day, video calls from that frozen station, his face pixelated by bad internet, but always smiling, always telling us how much he missed us. He'd say, "I can't wait to get home. I can't wait to hold you both." And I believed every word. Because that's what you do when you don't know the truth, is waiting to slap you in the face the second he sets foot back on your porch. The day he came back from Antarctica is burned into my memory like a bad dream you can't wake up from. He landed on a warm November afternoon. He texted from the airport in Chile, "Baby, I'm almost home. I love you so much. I can't wait to see you and our little girl." Our daughter was so excited she couldn't sleep the night before. She made him a giant welcome sign covered in glitter and little drawings of penguins and icebergs. We blew up balloons, cooked his favorite dinner shrimp pasta, and I filled the house with the smell of fresh bread, hoping it'd feel like home the second he walked through that door. At the airport, we watched families reunite. Other men from his team ran to their wives, scooping up their kids like they'd been gone a lifetime. But my husband, he walked out of those gates like he'd just come back from the grocery store. No smile, no rush, just this weird blank look. I remember filming on my phone, ready for the tears, the big movie moment. But he just put his bag down, bent to hug our daughter, and stood there awkwardly like he wanted to be anywhere else. I brushed it off, told myself he was exhausted. 13 months staring at ice can't be good for your head, right? Back home, he didn't even eat the dinner I'd made. He went straight to bed, called our daughter in to nap beside him like when she was little. It almost felt sweet, like maybe we'd get back to normal. But that night, my daughter came into the kitchen while I was packing up leftovers. Her tiny voice, so sure yet so afraid. "Mommy, I saw Daddy texting another woman. He sent her a heart." I froze. I wanted to laugh it off a heart emoji. Really? But something about the way she said it, the way her eyes looked just like mine the night my mom told me my dad was leaving, made me sick to my stomach. When I confronted him, he denied it with that same calm voice that had always made me feel safe. "It's nothing." She misunderstood. "It was just a joke." But you know that feeling you get when something inside you snaps? I felt it. I pushed him harder, asked again and again. The truth started to trickle out like poison from a wound. He finally said, "Okay, fine. There was someone. She's 30. We were together there. She wants me to leave." I swear, the room spun. I felt like I was watching a movie of my own life. 25 years together, a house we built, a daughter who worshipped him, all of it unraveling over some woman he met in the loneliest place on earth. He cried, he begged me to understand. But you know what broke me more? He answered her calls right there, in our house, in front of me, in front of our daughter. He sat on our couch, the same one where we'd curled up to watch Christmas movies, whispering to another woman while our child stood frozen in the hallway. It was the moment I realized I wasn't fighting for him. I was fighting for a family that didn't exist anymore. I still tried. God, did I try. We still shared a bed. We still made love desperate and raw, as if we could squeeze out whatever pieces of us were left. I told myself maybe I could fix it. Maybe we could pretend the cracks weren't there. But deep down, I knew the truth. No woman deserves to beg a man to choose her twice. After that night, my world spun out so fast I barely remember parts of it. He was home, but he wasn't really there. His body sat on our couch, his mind still stuck on some frozen outpost with a woman half a world away. I kept telling myself this was just a phase, a nightmare I'd wake up from. But every morning, there she was, buzzing his phone at 6 a.m., her name popping up while our daughter was eating her cereal, pretending not to notice. He'd answer right there in our living room, like the last 25 years meant nothing. I felt humiliated, not just betrayed, humiliated in my own home. I begged him to stop, not even to break it off, but to at least not take her calls where our daughter could hear. He'd promised then the phone would ring, and there he'd go again. And every time a little piece of me died. People always ask me, why didn't you kick him out right then? And the truth is, I didn't know how to be alone. I'd been with him since I was 18. I didn't know my own favorite color, my own dreams, without him in the picture. Losing him felt like losing my whole future, even if he'd already chosen to throw it away. Meanwhile, our daughter was watching everything. She was 10, the same age I was when my dad left. One day, she looked at me with those big, broken eyes and said, "Mom, I ruined our family, didn't I? If I hadn't seen that message, you and Daddy would still be together." I hugged her so tight I thought I'd break her. "No, baby, you didn't break us. You saved me from a lie I would have lived in forever." I wanted so badly to keep our family together. So badly that I ignored every red flag. We'd fight all night, then hold each other like we'd die without it. The worst part? The more I begged him to stay, the more she called. The more she called, the more I begged. It was like watching myself from the outside, a woman who'd once promised she'd never let a man destroy her like her father had destroyed her mother. The day I finally saw my future, if I stayed, was the day I took a work trip to Seattle. I remember sitting alone in that hotel room, looking out at the rain, replaying every lie, every tear. I pictured myself 5 years down the line checking his phone, waiting for him to come home late, wondering if every touch was a lie. I thought about our daughter, learning that this is what love looks like. Betrayal, silence, begging. And right then, I knew if I stayed, I'd be teaching her to become me, to accept crumbs when she deserved the whole damn cake. When I got home, nothing had changed. He was still answering her calls at the breakfast table, still making excuses, still looking at me like he didn't even see me anymore. And I finally said the words I'd been too scared to say. "You need to go." He stared at me like I'd slapped him. "Where am I supposed to go?" he asked. I just looked at him and thought, That's not my problem anymore. I gave him until the 6th of December to find somewhere else to stay. 25 years together. And it ended with me handing him a deadline like an eviction notice. He dragged his feet, acting like he was the victim. But where will I go? Airbnbs are expensive. I just stared at him. You blew up our family for a fling in Antarctica? I wanted to scream. And you're worried about the cost of a cheap hotel? While he was busy pitying himself, our daughter was crumbling. She'd always called him her hero, her Rambo. Now she'd sit on her bed, clutching her stuffed animals, asking, Mom, where's my dad? Why doesn't he love me the same? I didn't have answers. I just held her until she fell asleep. After he moved out, he'd pick her up sometimes, but the new girlfriend never let him take her for long. I'd lie to our daughter, telling her he had work or his friend needed help. The truth? He was too busy playing house with a woman who didn't want his kid around. It was like watching history repeat itself. When I was 10, my dad's new wife did the same thing. Now here I was, 40-something years old, staring at my own child living my same heartbreak. I promised myself, not again. This ends with me. One night, while our daughter sobbed on the floor, begging for her old family back, I realized something had to change. Florida suddenly felt like a graveyard of broken promises, the same streets, the same neighbors, the same gossip. I'd always dreamed of moving to the U.S. for a fresh start, but I'd stayed for him. Now, there was nothing holding me back. I made the choice in the middle of that night. No more waiting for him to be a decent dad. No more trying to fix what he'd shattered. I was done building my future around a man who wouldn't lift a finger for our daughter's heart. I applied for a master's program I'd always wanted but never dared to do. The acceptance came faster than I expected, a sign from the universe that maybe it was finally my turn to start over. I packed up our life, sold what I could, said goodbye to the house where I'd once imagined we'd grow old. Before we left, I called him over one last time. Our daughter was buzzing with excitement about the move, the new school, the new friends, the new life, far from the mess he'd left behind. He sat on our old couch, confused. I don't get it, he said. Why do you have to go? I looked him dead in the eyes and told him, you were supposed to go to Antarctica to build us a better future. Instead, you blew it all up. But that dream, it's not dead. I'm still going to make it happen with or without you. He had nothing to say, because deep down he knew. He gave up on us long before I ever gave up on him. Leaving was the hardest thing I've ever done, but staying would have killed me piece by piece. When I booked those plane tickets to the States, I wasn't just crossing borders. I was closing the door on a version of myself I'd carried since I was 18. The girl who waited, who begged, who swallowed her tears to keep the peace. Before we left, I told him we needed to finalize everything. The divorce, the money, our daughter's future. He swore up and down he'd take care of us, but he'd lied about bigger things before, so why would I believe him now? I hired a family lawyer, filed for child support, and braced myself for the pushback. He was furious not because he cared about us, but because it made everything real. He begged me not to make it official, like keeping our life in limbo would somehow hold me hostage, but I'd already let go. Meanwhile, our daughter was counting down the days. She packed her favorite stuffed animals, made goodbye cards for her friends at school, and told me every night, Mommy, it's going to be better over there, right? And I'd smile, even when I wanted to cry. Yes, baby, it's going to be so much better. The last time he saw her before we moved, he barely looked me in the eye. He hugged our daughter at the curb like she was a chore he couldn't wait to cross off his list. She climbed into his truck with her little backpack, still hoping for the dad she used to believe in. When he brought her back, she walked through the door quieter than I'd ever seen her. She told me later, Mom, he's not my daddy anymore. He's just a man I don't know. And you know what? She was right. That man had died a long time ago, somewhere between his last mission and the heart emoji he sent from that frozen wasteland. When we landed in the States, I felt like I could finally breathe. The Florida sun hit different when you weren't carrying a man's secrets on your back. We moved into a tiny apartment, nothing fancy, but ours. I enrolled in my master's program, started freelancing again, and rebuilt my career piece by piece. Every day, I watched my daughter come back to life too. New friends, new school, a room with pink curtains and string lights where no one argued on the other side of the door. She laughed more. She slept through the night again. She started to believe in tomorrow. Sometimes she'd ask about him if he missed her, if he'd ever come visit. I told her the truth. He loves you in his own way. But he doesn't know how to be the dad you deserve. It wasn't about poisoning her heart. It was about showing her that some people just aren't capable of giving what they promise. I'll never forget the day she looked at me and said, "Mom, thank you for not staying sad like Grandma did." I held her so tight because in that moment I knew I'd broken the cycle. My mother's sadness stopped with me. Our new life wasn't perfect, but it was ours. For the first time in years, I could hear my own thoughts without his voice drowning them out. I rediscovered little things about myself, how I liked my coffee, what music made me dance in the kitchen, how I'd always dreamed of seeing my name on a byline as a foreign correspondent. Funny thing, pain has a way of opening doors you thought were sealed shut. One night, an old friend called me up. She'd seen a job posting for a reporter position with an American network. "You should go for it, Lou. They need someone bilingual. You'd kill it." I almost laughed. Me? The woman who used to cry in the shower so no one would hear? The woman who once thought her whole worth was wrapped around a man's loyalty? But something in me whispered, why not? I sent in my application at 2 a.m. with tears drying on my cheeks. A month later, I was hired my first big gig since moving here. I was 44, with my whole life in boxes, and suddenly I had a press pass and a microphone and my own stories to tell. And you know what? That job didn't save me. I saved myself. But it reminded me I was still alive, still worthy of more than the scraps I'd settled for. Meanwhile, he stayed back home, playing house with the woman he'd chosen over us. Sometimes neighbors would send me photos of her sitting on my old couch, her clothes in my old closet, her car parked in my spot. They'd say, "How can you stand it?" And I'd shrug. Because when you've survived the fire, you don't care about the ashes. I never told our daughter the worst parts, how he took calls from that woman in front of us, how he let her feel like second best. I only told her enough to understand she wasn't the reason he changed. She asks sometimes if I hate him. I tell her, "Number, I pity him. A man who destroys his family to feel young will grow old alone." The truth is, the man I love died long before the plane touched down from Antarctica. What's left is just a ghost in a borrowed apartment, pretending he didn't ruin the one thing that truly mattered. But me? I'm not a ghost. I'm flesh and bone and laughter and plans. I watch our daughter every day, doing homework on her pink rug, practicing dance moves on TikTok, giggling on FaceTime with her new best friends. She has bad days. Sure, she'll always carry that scar. But she's healing. And so am I. Sometimes, late at night, I lie awake and replay it, all the love, the betrayal, the moment my daughter's tiny voice broke, the truth wide open. And I realize now, I wasn't scared of losing him. I was terrified of losing the family I'd built around him. But families can break. And they can rebuild too, just not always with the same people. Today, when people look at me, they see this strong woman, the one who picked up the pieces, moved to another country, started over with nothing but a kid and a suitcase full of heartbreak. They say, "You're so brave, you're so resilient," and maybe I am. But let me tell you, no woman wants to be strong for this reason. No woman wants to earn her strength through betrayal and sleepless nights and tears she hides from her own child. Some nights, I still hear echoes of his promises. The whispered, "I love yous," from that frozen station. The way he'd bury his face in my hair and say he couldn't breathe without me. All lies, all empty words that used to make me feel safe. But now, they're just reminders of who I used to be. The woman who believed forever meant the same thing to both of us. Our daughter's 11 now. She still talks to him sometimes, but she's different. There's a piece of her childhood she'll never get back. When he calls, she listens, but she keeps her guard up. She told me once, "Mom, I'll never trust a man like that, not even Daddy." It breaks my heart and heals it at the same time because maybe she's already stronger than I ever was at her age. She's the reason I keep going. She's the reason I left that old life behind. She's the reason I believe in tomorrow. When I stand in our little apartment, the one I pay for with my own work, my own sweat, I feel proud. There's no ghost of him here. No shadows of another woman on my couch. Just me and my girl and the sound of us laughing in the kitchen when I burn the pancakes or dancing to songs from a playlist that's finally mine. Sometimes he tries to make contact, sending excuses, telling me he didn't mean for it to go this way. But you know what I tell him? Nothing. There's nothing left to say. Because you can't build a future with someone who used your heart like a doormat. Do I wish it had ended differently? Of course. A clean break, a little respect, a little dignity. We could have been two adults saying, "We tried, we failed, but let's protect our child from the fallout." But that's not how he did it. So now he lives in the wreckage he made and I live in the life I rebuilt from the ground up. I look at my daughter, and I know the cycle stopped with me. I didn't let my story become my mother's story. I didn't let his betrayal become the grave I'd lie in for decades. I mourned him like a widow because the man I loved died the day he chose to be someone else. And me? I'm still here, still working, still loving, still showing my daughter that the desert you walk through after betrayal isn't your home, it's just a place you pass through on your way to something better. So, if you're listening to this, maybe you've been where I've been crying on the bathroom floor, wondering how you'll ever stand up again. You will. You'll stand, you'll take one step, then another. And one day, you'll wake up in a place you made with your own hands where no one gets to lie to you ever again. I'm proof of that, and so is my daughter. Thank you for walking with me this far. If this story touched your heart, share it with those who need to hear it. Starting over is possible. And if you want to tell your story, fill out the form here in the description. I promise your voice matters too.